Ladies and gents, welcome. It's Friday. It's 7:30. It's another edition of Aid Thompson and Other Disappointments. What's going on? Brought to you in association with globalbutterflies.com. Do go and check it out if you run a business, if you're looking to make your business more trans-aware or more aware of the non-binary community, if you want your business to be more progressive and to benefit from being so, because there are commercial benefits from being so, go and check out globalbutterflies.com. Right, what's up? Let's get into this, shall we? How you doing? Welcome, pull up a pew, grab yourself a beer, pop open the champagne on this most celebratory of Fridays. Isn't it? It's not often that we feel upbeat and optimistic on this podcast, is it? You know, it's not often that we allow the crushing reality that we're all staring down the barrel of to just pause for a moment. You know, just pause for a breath or a sigh, while we take a moment to experience what once could have been described as hope, dear listeners. That's where we're at today, isn't it? Following last night's news. Today is absolutely one of those days. It's a things can only get better day. It's Friday the 16th of February. The results are in from the by-elections last night. They came in, unfortunately, too late for the newspapers this morning, or fortunately, depending on, you know, whether you're a Tory or a Labour, whether you are a right-wing newspaper editor or leader of the Labour Party. Could have done with that press, I'm sure. I mean, by the time that you guys hear this, right, it'll sort of be old news, won't it? At 7:30 on a Friday night, because, you know, I'm recording this on my lunch break ahead of time. Ordinarily, we do a live show, don't we? Friday night, 7:30 every week, crack open a beer together and try to make sense of the senseless. But this week, tonight, I am out, guys. Very rare for me to actually get out the house with childcare sorted. We got tickets to go and see something. We're off to see Janie Godley's comedy show. It's called Not Dead Yet. So yeah, hopefully you will enjoy this show as much as I will be enjoying that one. But at the time of recording, guys, it's still very much the big story of the day, isn't it? Is that the Tories have been wiped out in 2 safe seats, or formerly safe seats. That's in one night. Double by-election. 28% swing in one of them, which is just... And obviously this is being reported today, as you would expect, with all the honesty and integrity that one might expect from Team Sunak and his salivating, self-flagellating, subservient cheerleaders in the right-wing press. I mean, it's really been quite the sight to behold this morning. Seeing little clips surface on Twitter, scanning through the newspapers. It's really been quite interesting to observe, if you are a news junkie, as I am. You know, it's been a sight to behold. If you've managed to resist the temptation, you know, in the light of the horrors of modern Britain, to gouge out your own eyeballs because you're so sick of everything. But the media rounds this morning, oh my God, Christ, the reactions to these by-elections. Did any of you guys in I was about to say in the live chat, but like, you know, if there's a live messaging thing or you want to drop a comment or whatever, get involved. But did any of you guys see the Rishi interview this morning, like in light of these by-election results? His reaction to how they've gone, the Conservative Party. Like, he's in front of these police cars, right? He's out in what looks like a police station car park. Like, I don't know if they finally caught up with him about the Partygate stuff, because everyone forgets that he was also implicated in Partygate. He also got a fixed penalty notice. Somehow he sort of skated by that. But he is still absolutely a law-breaking Prime Minister. Anyway, in this interview this morning, he stood out there in a police station car park, and the journalist says to him, he says, "Oh, well, it's been a bit of a bad night for your lot, hasn't it?" You know, fairly standard questioning, I think, after you've been mauled at the ballot box. And Rishi Sunak, bless him, is just... He's like, actually, no, it's not. I know you might think that, you know. I know you might think that, but appearances can be deceptive, my good fellow. I mean, look at me, right? I appeared to be all about transparency and integrity, and yet there I was at the inquiry a couple of weeks ago claiming I didn't recall anything. And here I am now. I'm about to tell you that 2 safe seat losses isn't somehow a total disaster for the Conservative Party and indeed for my leadership. So, I don't know, man. Like, he's absolutely deluded, isn't he? He's absolutely on a different planet. Do you think he actually believes what he's saying? Or does he just hold us in absolute contempt that he expects that we're going to believe this? Which one is it, Rishi? Like, seriously. Like, I used to think he was, just a bit detached. A bit enslaven to the same political machinations as every other Tory leader becomes enslaven to. Like, they all start off with good intentions, I think, and then once they get in the big chair in number 10, I think they are just as restricted and ordered and pushed and pressured to behave in the same... That's why they all end up in the same problems, right? Like, do you remember Theresa May? When Theresa May first stood outside the steps, like number 10, and she was all about, the just about managings and, speaking up for those who don't have a voice. That first maiden speech outside number 10 after she became Prime Minister was just like a different person to who she actually ended up becoming. And even after she became Prime Minister, once she'd left office, now she speaks up about foreign aid and, she celebrates the downfall of worse Prime Ministers like Boris Johnson. Like, I think she's probably this is weird to say this, considering when she was Home Secretary, she was responsible for sending those go-home vans around. Like, she was a real ball-busting, immigrant-hating Home Secretary. Hostile environment, that was her thing, right? But I think outside of politics, I think she thinks she's actually quite a socially liberal character. It's just when she's pushed in with all this pressure from the donors and the whips and that's when they're all forced to behave and speak and action the same policies in the same way. Once the machine kicked in with Theresa May and CCHQ and the donors and their expectations in response for cutting the checks to them, the secret meetings with Murdoch started, didn't they? The pressures of Brexit. The pressures of tabloid editors came knocking. And then she sort of metamorphosized into this, hard-nosed, no-deal Brexit type, didn't she? Crushed the saboteurs and all that. And it's been the same with Sunak, right? He started off Mr. Honesty and Integrity, a return to trust in politics. And yet once the machinations, the CCHQ, the donors, once it all started to kick in, then where are we now? We're back to hooky deals with big oil, lost WhatsApps, I don't recall, question marks over emphasis shares, and what? Like trying to find ways to manipulate the election. It's like the latest descent into the integrity bin. But yeah, anyway, back to this interview this morning, right? Whew! Jeepers. Like, I don't know what they do to private school kids to give them this unshakable self-confidence. The entitlement. This self-belief that you should still be Prime Minister, or you should still be Cabinet Minister, or newspaper editor, or whatever the job is that one of these private school people takes on. This idea that you should still be that, even after all of the evidence is telling you that you suck at it. What do they do to these kids at private school to deliver them that unshakable self-belief? Like, you would think that taking them away from their parents, right, and caning them over some fat, grey-haired fucker's Victorian desk night after night, you'd think that would leave them feeling unloved and abandoned and worthless, wouldn't you? You would think it would weave in or sow the seeds of crushingly low self-esteem, perhaps. And they'd all just be recording self-satisfied satirical podcasts instead to chase approval that way. But no, it turns out that sending children to private school and denying them a frequent supply of parental love, care and protection actually generates pure, undiluted self-confidence. It's wild. How does that become this? It's incredible. Because in this interview this morning, like the outside broadcast guy, the journalist guy with the stick microphone, right? He's like, so, it's a bad night for you lot then, right? Like, fairly open question, that's an easy question for you to answer, Rishi. Forget the PMQs, forget the breakfast sofas, forget Koonsberg, forget Emily Maitlis, all of the people who might actually ask you a challenging question. This one's an easy one for you, Sunak. You can knock this out the park, straight out the gate. It's a yes. Just in case, if you want a little hint, just say yes. It was a bad night for you. This is not mastermind. You got this. I've got faith in you. The guy's like, so you lot had a bad night then, right? And this is what he says, right? I've got it down here, word for word. This is what he replies with. You lot have had a bad night then, haven't you? Right. And he says, well, midterm by-elections are always difficult for incumbent governments. That's how he starts. Now, bear in mind, this isn't just him speaking freely. They don't let prime ministers just speak freely. That's why he sounds so robotic. That's why Theresa May was the Maybot. That's why they hid Boris Johnson in a fridge, because he couldn't remember the lines that his publicist and PR guys and CCHQ people had just gone, just say this. Can you remember this bit? You can't remember it. Okay, well, in that case, just hide over there until they go away. So what I'm about to say, or what I've just said, he has said, is the line, right? He's been pre-briefed on this. This is the wise thing to say, to respond with, right? The guy says, so bad night for you lot then. He says, well, midterm by-elections are always difficult for incumbent governments. So first off, right, we're not midterm. Yeah. Like, how is this the line that's come out of the PR guys and CC? Anyway, we're not midterm, guys. We're tickling the balls of a general election here. That's how close we are to a general election. It could be as soon as 10 weeks from now. 10 weeks! If it's going to be a snap general election in May. So we're already into the rivers and rapids of his bullshit here. Just in the first sentence. But let's crack on. Let's see what else he's got. So he says midterm by-elections are always difficult for incumbent governments, and the circumstances of these by-elections were particularly challenging. That's what he says. Word for word, remember? The circumstances of these by-elections were particularly challenging. How do you mean, Rish? How do you mean? What was particularly challenging here? What were the challenges you were facing specifically that you were seeking to overcome? Was it that the guy who resigned in Kingswood did so over your failing net zero commitments, thereby triggering this by-election for a seat that will shortly be wiped out by boundary changes anyway? Like it's so ridiculous. They've just had to fight this by-election for a seat that is about to be swept away by their own boundary changes, which they're implementing to try to skewer the result of the general election. Like, honestly, like, when Sunak found out that this guy had resigned and that this was going to be a by-election, he must have been like, why are we even spending war chest money fighting this by-election? like, all that's going to happen is we're going to win the seat. Like, we will retain the seat, but then it'll get erased 3 months later when the new election boundary changes come in time for the GE. Like, what the fuck are we doing? You know, it'd be like winning a mansion in a poker game while it's burning down. It is the very definition of a hollow victory, had they even won it. So there's that. And then what's the other circumstances with these by-elections? How else were these by-elections particularly challenging, in his words? Why were these by-elections particularly challenging and difficult circumstances? Was it that you're 20 points down in the national polls and everyone hates you? Is that it? Is it those circumstances that were particularly challenging Rishi Sunak? Sunak's approval rating, I don't need to tell you guys, Sunak's approval rating is in the toilet. It's just that. It's not even in the toilet. It's like, it's round the U-bend. It's gone round the U-bend, out to the sewer and out to Portsmouth Harbour. It's been funneled out of that pipe in plumes of sewage, clouded around a very lost and decidedly grumpy now Nemo out in the sea, out in Portsmouth Harbour. Imagine that, just a little lost orange Nemo with just endless plumes of stringy sewage draped over his little fins. And the onslaught of this is only ever just broken up by Rishi Sunak's approval rating, which just comes fluttering out at the end of it. And yes, look, okay, I know that metaphor went a little bit far. His approval rating is in the toilet, is what I'm trying to say. Let's get back to the point. There's a point, was there, this time? Aid? Was there? Yeah, okay, fine. But I mean, yeah, where was I? We were talking about so his particularly challenging, difficult set of circumstances, which are essentially, you know, that his polling is terrible, his approval rating is terrible, the fact that 4 out of 5 of his pledges are now also toast. I mean, to be fair to him, those circumstances, when you look at them, they are particularly challenging. Aren't they? Like, he's not lying. He's being honest. I mean, like, anyone who's ever shown up to a party where you know you're not welcome will attest that then running a popularity contest while you're there can yield some disappointing results. Is all I'm saying. You know, it's like the groom's mistress showing up to the wedding reception. And then the next day she shows up to the hotel breakfast, you know, and she's like, I mean, it was never going to be a great night for me, you know. Anyway, he goes on, if you look at the results, it was a very low turnout. That's what he says. And again, look, this is all word for word. I'm transcripting this from his interview this morning. He says, if you look at the results, it was a very low turnout, which is interesting, I thought, because Uxbridge wasn't much higher. And they only clung on to it barely, you know, by a hair's breadth. They clung on to Uxbridge. But if you cast your mind back to that by-election, back to Uxbridge, how did they and the Sun and the Mail, how did they all report on that, do you think? It was like, it's a barnstorming victory for the Tories, isn't it? Who are standing up for motorists, rejecting ULEZ. It's an outright rejection of Keir Starmer's net zero zealotry. Bloody Marxist, communist. This is the people fighting back. That's how it's reported, wasn't it? Did anybody say anything about a low turnout then, did they? No. Okay then, right. Anyone mention any circumstances, particularly challenging stuff Any of that taken into consideration with Labour's performance in that by-election? I don't recall that happening. Like, the weights are so obviously shifted against Labour with this sort of stuff, isn't it? Like, it's not even funny. Like, you can just see it. You can sniff it. Like, even in this week's coverage of how the recession was reported. Like, if that had been a Labour government, man, stewarding the economy into recession, there'd be no talk about, like, oh, it's a gentle start to a recession. Oh, it probably won't last long. It's not a real recession. Everyone would be losing their minds. Oh, you can't trust Labour. I've told you before, you can't trust Labour with the economy. That's all they would be saying. You'd be reading that in every newspaper from left to right. But yeah, anyway, so like when Labour failed to get Uxbridge, right, it was a seat that they were never predicted to take in the first place. Do you remember? Like, it's been Conservative for a while, I think. It's always been Tory, I think. Happy to be corrected if somebody wants to drop that in the comments or whatever. But they got within a grasp of it. You know, they almost took it from them. The Tories just clung on to it. Barely. And yet, the supposed loss of this by-election for Labour was like, oh, well, Keir Starmer has questions to answer here. Obviously, his message is not getting through. What do Labour even stand for, right? That's how Uxbridge was reported. What does this say about Labour's waning popularity? Is this the start of Starmer fatigue? Your least favourite journalists would come out with. And here's the tragic thing, is like Labour are so devoid of self-worth or entitlement, you know? Like, there's no misplaced self-confidence in the front bench of Labour, is there? Labour are so devoid of self-worth that when they read these headlines, they don't go, well, hang on a second, that's not quite right. What they do is they scuttle off back to Labour HQ, don't they? And they go, guys, did you hear the Today programme? Apparently we should have got it. We should have won Uxbridge. God, we better tell Sadiq to row back on the ULEZ stuff. Post haste. Rishi says that we're all against motorists. Whatever shall we do now? You get half the shadow cabinet in some glass meeting room just across the promenade, whipping themselves stupid with those Catholic flagellation beads, you know? Punishing themselves for it. Anyway, so what does he say next in our word-for-word transcript of Rishi Sunak the morning after losing 2 safe seats in a by-election? He says, well, the results show that we've got work to do to show people that we are delivering on their priorities. So you get a faint acknowledgement of reality there. You get a vague dip of the toe into reality, you know? It's sort of, it's alluding to, you know, it's like they're saying, well, we obviously have to get our message out there more, you know, that we're stopping the boats, that we're achieving growth, which of course, in a way is correct. He does have to get that message out there. He does have a lot of work to do on that, on both of those, mostly because he isn't achieving either. You know, like, well, it shows that we've got a lot of work to do to show people that we're delivering on their priorities. Oh, right, okay. Which ones are those? Stopping the boats and achieving growth. Okay, so you've got work to do to convince people. Is that because you are failing at both of those? Yes, it is. Then he says, this is my favourite bit. My favourite bit of all of it. Then he says, the results show that there isn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for the alternative. That's what the results show. So in Sunak's mind, in Rishi Sunak's mind, you can win a constituency seat. You can win 2 of them, in fact, that were formerly safe seats for your, like, what's the word? Competitor, right? You can win these safe seats off them. But rather than that showing that people want these guys in power, what it actually shows is that people aren't that bothered about you. They voted you in because they're not really that fussed about you. Like, I wish I had his self-confidence. I really do. Just imagine what you could achieve if you weren't held back by logic and a mostly well-founded belief that there are limits to your ability and popularity, and that it's possible that some people out there might tire of you. Imagine what you could achieve if you weren't tempered by logic and reality. God, what might be possible for me? I could have won a singing competition or something. I could have gone on X Factor and got a 6-album deal or something. If I just got up there, filled in the application form, got on the stage and sung it, it's possible that might have happened. Although, if I do engage with reality and logic and realism, it probably was never going to happen, but it might have if I wasn't tempered by self-doubt. Anyway, what might be possible if you had that Winchester, Westminster, and Eton private school arrogance buggered into you by the housemaster every detention? What might be possible for you? Is that how it starts, do you think, dear listeners? Is that how this sort of self-confidence and entitlement and booming self-worth, is that how it actually starts to take root, someone like Rishi Sunak he's a regular kid, hanging out with his mates. He's cracking jokes with his friends. And then he says something that's it's a bit untoward, or maybe there's a bit colourful of language in there, and the teacher overhears it, and, where he would have previously grown up as a regular teenager and then a regular 20-something or something, right? The punishment at these stuffy establishment schools is perhaps so abusive and severe that the housemaster has him back after school in detention, but it's half punishment and half encouragement, It's you don't use language like that, Sunak. You don't. It's disrespectful, but God, this is good. God, you're so good, Rishi. Okay, look, that's I got a little bit bit full on. I'm just trying to spitball here a little bit. I'm just trying to find the reason why or how public schoolboys like Rishi Sunak, banished from their parents, might have somehow overcome the odds to end up with self-confidence. It's an ongoing line of inquiry, guys. It is. So anyway, where were we? Just before we move, right, the thought remains. It's inhabiting my head day after day. I'm like, how is he so confident, that this means that people are enthusiastic about him and not about Labour? How do you get there? How is that the conclusion that he's drawn from results like this? Or the other by-elections before? It's Labour win it. Yeah, I don't think it shows any enthusiasm for Labour then. Right. Well, okay then. Let's sit down and talk about this, Rish. Because I'm gonna be straight up with you here. I'm confused, son. Because look, I don't know if there's any Tories listening to this. Probably not. Let's be honest. But if you do, could somebody please explain to me, if winning 2 safe seats is a sign of no enthusiasm for you, right? Then what the fuck does coming third mean? What is that a sign of? How much enthusiasm does that indicate for you and your ilk? It's like a bronze medalist looking up at the gold, right? Looking up at the gold medalist and going don't take it to heart, son. Nah, don't. It's fine. Just come back next year. Try a bit harder. You'll get the hang of it. I got faith in you. While the gold medalist looks down at the bronze, are you all right? Are you mental or? So yeah. Anyway, look, that's been a fun story. I think that's lifted the spirits, certainly. off the back of the, recession, depression talk and, Labour's 28 billion green energy stuff and then the anti-Semitism. This has been a nice way to round off the week, I think. But yeah, Rishi Sunak's interview, man. I mean, like, I was saying on Twitter this morning, right? I was saying, like, his whole vibe with that. The journalists go like, oh, it's been a bit of a bad night for you guys, hasn't it? And then his just outright delusion and persistent self-confidence, baseless self-confidence is like, Sunak is like a rodent experiment, is what I was saying. Like where they grow an ear on the back of a mouse or whatever. Well, he's like a lab rat, is what he is. He's a lab rat that somebody grafted the self-confidence of a lion onto. That is his vibe today, and indeed every day. Anyway, elsewhere in the world, let's move on from UK politics. Elsewhere in the world, and I know right now you're probably thinking, oh God, here we go. He's going to talk about Trump again. Back over to the US, is it? Okay, great, wicked. No, this time, Russia. Alexei Navalny was a Russian politician, sort of de facto leader of the opposition, right? Over in Russia, and this is ahead of their general elections, which are supposed to be taking place later this year. Well, Alexei Navalny has died, apparently, according to reports today. And, I mean, there's not much that's funny here, unfortunately, guys. I don't want to bum you out, but here was a guy who was, very bravely going up against Vladimir Putin. When you think about what some of Vladimir Putin's adversaries have also, how their ends have been met, for want of a better phrase. Incredibly brave to go up against him. But Putin had him arrested and detained without charge and then without legal representation. And then he was shipped off to some far-flung, underfunded jail where his lawyers couldn't reach him. And now, after all of that, even before their no doubt heavily controlled and manipulated election begins, Navalny has died in prison, aged 47. And, we don't know the circumstances of his death just yet. I don't know if we ever really will, because I can't imagine the Kremlin releasing that information. But I don't think it's outrageous to suggest that Vladimir Putin probably had him killed. And it's weird because, like, for all the weird alt-right love that there is for Putin out there now, not least from Tucker Carlson, by the way, which is just utterly fucking weird at the moment. Like, I don't know how many of you follow Tucker Carlson or are aware of his big interview with Putin last week, but since then, and since Putin, like, has completely pied him off, disrespected him afterwards. Like, Putin is on record talking about that interview where he's just like, I thought that interview would be harder. He was a softball. He was a pussy. And yes, I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but he's pied him off, definitely. Even since then, Tucker is still posting videos like he's his hype man. He's bigging him up from the sidelines, telling everyone how amazing Russia is. Like, it's wild. Like his tweet the other day, he even said, this is his words, his Twitter account. He said he's been radicalized by how much better Russians have it than Americans. With all the food in the supermarkets over there and the cleanliness of the streets and how friendly everyone is. Which is just tragic. It's like, he does the thing, he pies him off, and Tucker's still there on the sidelines going, yeah, I still love you, though. It's like, did you ever have a friend? We all had a friend like this. Do you ever have a friend when you were younger whose other half humiliated them and disrespected them constantly? But week after week, they'd get back with them, Like, they'd stand there in the pub with them, like a couple again. And this guy would call his girl, he would call her a twat to her face in front of all of her friends, and she would just, shrug him and suck him off again. Like, like we've all had friends and situations like that, haven't we? where you pull your friend aside and you're like, God, can you just try and respect yourself, please? You know, do I have to pay 15 grand a term fees to get you to even half value yourself? Do I? Well, that's Tucker Carlson right now, right? He's been totally outmaneuvered by Putin in this one-on-one interview where Tucker asked him one question and then Putin took like 30 minutes to answer it. So Tucker wasn't like interrupting him or challenging him, so walked all over him. And then since the interview, he's been completely, cut adrift and dismissed by Vladimir Putin. But here he is day after day on Twitter, ostensibly doing travel vlogs. He's pivoted from political commentary to travel vlogging, and telling us how much better Moscow is than Washington. That's his new vibe now. That's the new content that Tucker Carlson is putting out. Dismissed by Putin, but still bigging him up. Still in Russia, talking about how amazing Russia is. Like, what do they have on you, Tucker? What do they have on you? Because I don't know, man. Like, we've all heard the story about Trump, haven't we? And the hookers, right? The tape, the bed sheets, the Russian hookers pissing on the bed sheet. Like, we've all heard that, right? There was a report on it. That's the idea, by the way, behind like Trump's unshakable support for Putin. That was the theory, is that he was filmed with these hookers in a Russian hotel, urinating on the bed, and then thereafter, somewhere along the line, somewhere before 2016, Putin was like, here is your script, and here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to say, because here is the tape. You want this coming out? This is called compromat, motherfucker. And so now we've got similar support from Tucker Carlson for Russia. It's like there's something there, isn't there? It's weird, no? And equally as weird is, for a lot of the American right, I think I spoke a little bit about this on a solo show recently, or maybe it was a YouTube, a little punk politics thing, or an alternative paper review, or something. I don't know. I remember talking about it. But it's weird how, like, for a lot of the American right, like, they're kind of buying into this pro-Russia narrative, aren't they? Like, they like to think, now at least, they like to think of Putin as a sort of strong man, don't they? As a sort of hard, strong man leader who's just looking out for his country. And they're like, well, Putin ain't never done nothing to me. Putin never harmed me, but the Bidens have. The Bidens tried to steal the election. The Bidens are sending my tax money to Zelensky. That's it. Like, that's the narrative that's coming out. I've seen tweets like this from seemingly legitimate accounts. I mean, look, I'm not a supremely expert technologist type guy, but I know a fake account when I see one. And these ones appear to be legit. And they're like, yeah, Putin's never done anything to me, but the Bidens have. And it's only when a story like this one today about Navalny dying, possibly being murdered. It's only when a story like this comes up that it's really hammered home again, like how vicious, how dangerous Putin is and can be, And it's a sort of story that needs to be marketed back to that same subset of the American right who sort of fantasize about how perfect it could be if they had an American version of Vladimir Putin. Well, they all have this idea that, Putin is a strongman leader who, actually maybe you should make a deal with, right? Like if Trump just made a deal with Putin, then a lot of the world's instability might go away. Because what's the worst that could happen? He probably won't invade anywhere else. I'm sure that won't happen if we totally remove the repercussions for him trying it the first time. I'm sure he won't learn the wrong lesson from that. You just do a deal with it. Send Trump in, they shake hands, it's all over. Like, I honestly think they believe that that's how the world works. But yeah, it's important to remind people who have this sort of idealized version of Putin in their heads, that this is a guy who blackmails, who steals who has some crazy percentage of Gazprom profits rerouted and funneled to his personal accounts. Like, it's insane. I think I was talking to Jules last week on the Friday night show about how Putin might very well be the richest guy in the world. Like, it's absolutely nutty how much money he has in the bank through oil and gas sales. He kidnaps, he plots, he steals, he murders. I mean, you know, we're probably not that far away now from people like Tucker Carlson weaving a narrative that the spy in a bag murder in Vauxhall, the Skripals, Litvinenko, like all of that stuff was actually orchestrated by GCHQ themselves. Like, that's the sort of narrative that we're creeping up to soon. Like, forget all of the evidence, forget the inquiries, the testimony, the investigations. Just weave that paranoia, that contrarianism out of Brexit and Trumpland and in to the West's security services, you know? That's kind of where it feels like we're headed. If enough Tucker Carlsons continue with this propaganda. You're going to have conversations with people where they're going to be like, yeah, do you remember the time that the spy, the GCHQ guy, he was about to expose the Russian mole in GCHQ, and then they found him dead in a bag. And even an escapology artist, expert guy, he couldn't get himself out of the bag in a similar situation. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah. And then do you remember how the ex-FSB, ex-KGB guy said that that was definitely a Russian hit? Yeah, I vaguely remember that as well. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen Farage at Large on GB News and Tucker Carlson's TCN show on X. I don't know if you've read those two pieces by the columnists at The Telegraph or seen Trump's latest rally or Newsmax, but all of these guys together are all saying now that all of that stuff was orchestrated by MI5 to make Putin look bad. And then you're going to get people going like, oh my God, oh, absolutely. No, oh, I totally believe this. Yes, I do. It all fits together perfectly. Like a horrible, dishonest and disjointed jigsaw puzzle. It all fits together perfectly. Of course they would want to make Putin look bad. Of course they would. Before all that, he looked rosy. He was a cuddly kitten. Before that. That's the problem with the West, isn't it? It's as soon as you have someone successful, someone with only good and pureness in their heart, the West just have to tear them down, don't they? And soil their reputation. Their good name. Well, I'm not playing that game, you know? I get my news directly from Tucker Carlson now. I refuse to play the mainstream media game. Putin was always and will always be a cute, cuddly little kitten. Like, it sounds like I'm joking, doesn't it? It sounds like I'm exaggerating, that could be where we're headed. But honestly, you know, like 5 or 10 years ago, cast your mind back. What was that? 2012? Okay, no. Where are we now? 2024. So 2014, right? If I'd asked you in 2014, like, do you ever think that the odds-on candidate for President of the United States of America will be up on a podium, you know, talking about how he's going to be a dictator on day one? Do you think that's likely to happen? What would you say? What would you have said in 2014? Would you ever have imagined that we are where we are now? In the West, in geopolitics. If I'd asked you in 2014, could you imagine that dictatorial figure up there? Could you imagine him then garnering the support of the rabid masses? And they would go off into Vox Pops and stuff afterwards to BBC News and Sky News and say stuff like, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but maybe America does need a dictator. You know, like, just completely flushing the whole idea of the America project down the toilet. Along with Sunak's approval rating and all the Portsmouth Harbour sewage. Would you ever have imagined that? I'm sorry to tell you, I'm sorry to have to say this, but I think maybe the United States does need a dictator. Would you ever have believed that that was where we were headed? If I'd asked you that 10 years ago. No, you would not. Because, you know, probably whenever you warned about it, whenever I warned about it, we were always being told that we were hysterical. Do you remember that? you remember those blissful, naive and innocent days? You know, where you would first hear about Donald Trump's political aspirations and you'd be like, I don't know, man. I mean, he's a bit Hitler-y, isn't he? You know, and then your friends would go like, oh, don't be ridiculous. You know, you sound ridiculous, Aid. Well, you don't think he sounds a bit Hitler-y? A little bit authoritative? Oh, you sound hysterical. Do you know that? Remember those days? Now you spool forward 10 years. Like, you could turn on Fox News today, couldn't you? And he'd be preaching to a crowd with a mosh pit of Nazis in front of him, who then clear out in a circle like it's going to be a fucking dance-off or something. And then in the middle of the circle, they start the book burning. like red banners unfurl either side of him with a swastika, you know? Like, you could switch on Fox News and see that right now. And honestly, would you have any other reaction other than... Yep, to be honest, I was sort of expecting this. It's, you know? And those same people who told you that you were hysterical before, if you went back to them now and showed them the Fox News footage of the banners and the book burning and the swastika and everything, I reckon they would turn around and look to you and they would go like, yeah, but they're not Nazis though, Aid. They're not... How do you mean? Because they got swastikas, book burnings, they're talking about deporting all of the immigrants. Like, how is that not? No, they're not. They're not Nazis. They're not German. Nazis are German, Aid. And that, dear listeners, is when you realise that this whole time that you've been politically engaged and you've been trying to persuade people or like win them over, you realise that this entire time, what you've actually been doing is arguing with certifiable unmedicated morons. That's it for this one. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are enjoying these shows and the alternative paper reviews that I put out most mornings, do join my community. If you go to my profile, there's a little button there. It says join. That's on YouTube. So you can join that, or you can join Patreon. There's always a link to the Patreon in the description of every show. Or if you're on YouTube right now and you're watching this and you've enjoyed it, and maybe some other stuff that I've put out, maybe click the 3 dots and you should be able to drop a little tip in the tip cup. No pressure, because it is, you know, we officially are in recession now, as they've branded it. So, you know, if you can't afford to, totally fine. It's a weird time for all of us, not least the Chancellor of the Exchequer right now. Anyway, but for now, that's it. I'll be back next week with a guested show next Friday, a solo show next Tuesday or Wednesday. Until then, I'm out this motherfucker.